Okay, so we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us today. So it's a new webinar of the French Center for Research on Contemporary China, the Taipei antenna, and we are very pleased today to receive Grégoire Bienvenu, who is a PhD student at Sorbonne Nouvelle, Paris 3, and the Communication University of China. His research interest lies in the political economy of China's hip-hop, focusing on the Chengdu scene where he has settled for a few years. So he recently published a current affair article on China perspectives named Rappers React to COVID-19, if I'm not mistaken. And today we will talk about so the reaction of Chinese rappers to the COVID-19, and with this webinar entitled Chinese Rappers React to COVID-19, Spitting Bars in the First Months of the Pandemic. So thanks a lot, Grégoire, for joining us today for our webinar series. And so yeah, we will start now with a conversation between us on the reaction of rappers during the COVID-19. And I just want to say to people who are watching us on YouTube that you can comment live on this webinar, and I will of course check out the comments, and I will read the comments and ask the questions to Grégoire when the time will come. So yeah, so thanks everyone for watching us, and thank you again, Grégoire, for being here with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks. So first, I want to ask you a question about charity songs, because you write in your article a brief history of charity songs in China and the Sinophone world, and I want to go back to this question of charity songs, which has a relatively long history in China and the Sinophone world, since the 86 Let the World Be Filled with Love, to more recent songs about natural catastrophe, as the Wenchuan earthquake and also the SARS pandemic. So can you talk a bit about these charity songs?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, and good morning. It's the morning here in France. Thank you for having me, Nathanel, and thank you to the CEFC. So yeah, I started this piece by talking about charity songs, actually in China, but also abroad. Well, I guess most of us know the history, or at least the big pieces of charity songs in the Western world. We know, we've probably heard about George Harrison's concert for Bangladesh in 1971, about Bob Geldof's Band Aid, and then that turned into the Live Aid in 1984, 1985. And probably the most famous song is, of course, We Are the World, which was released about at the same time in 1985. Well, even if there's a debate, it hasn't really started at this time, charity songs, because even people like Elvis Presley or Woody Guthrie, they did charity concerts in the past. But this is the very start of charity rock, what we call charity rock, which has not much to do with rock, but is just used as a brand tag. And it went as far as to China and the Sinophone worlds. So you mentioned it, of course, maybe the first and the most famous song is Let the World Be Filled with Love. All right, so here we have pictures, so great. So as you can see, it's in the top left corner of the screen. And so this song has been recorded in the Beijing's Workers' Stadium, and at that time it gathered around 100, I think totally it was 112 Chinese artists wearing yellow and pink jackets. And so it has been recorded, it has been written by Guo Feng, and then it has been recorded in the idea to celebrate the International Year of Peace. So it was 1986. And since this time, a lot of charity songs have been written in China and also in Taiwan, in Hong Kong. I'd say like we have the name like Shou Qianchuo, so hand in hand, which has been written in reaction to the SARS pandemic. So every time a disaster happened since the 80s, more or less, we would have a gathering of artists that will spontaneously meet in order to give support, to raise visibility, also raise money, raise media concern, to bring support to a disaster in the world. And so the International Year of Peace, then the SARS, and of course there has been another disaster, the Wenchuan earthquake in 2008, so in Sichuan. And these gathering of artists have helped promoting the problems faced regionally, and then also raise money in order to bring support to local people and show that even artists and rock stars, pop stars, and people very mediatized care about people that have been affected by those disasters. So this is where I located the introduction of my article, because I think what we have seen with the pandemic of COVID-19, and maybe we'll talk about it, because a lot of these songs have been sung again in 2020 and even 2021. Well, what we have seen with the pandemic and the Chinese rappers is somehow rooted, the mobilization is somehow rooted in this heritage, but in another way, it's very different. So I took this as a basis to try to understand how more recent artists reacted to the disaster of the pandemic.
Thank you. So before digging into the Chinese rappers' reaction to COVID-19, maybe we can come back a bit to the history of Chinese hip hop, which did not emerge with the popular IT show The Rap of China, but has a deeper root in the Chinese subcultural scene. So maybe just for the people who doesn't know the history of Chinese hip hop, maybe we can talk a bit about that before going to the COVID reaction.
Definitely. I think it's very important to understand that rap in China, as you can read somewhere and hear somewhere, hasn't started in 2017 with the broadcast of the first season of The Rap of China. I've read somewhere it was the year 1 of hip hop in China. This is not the case. Well, hip hop in China has very deep roots. Much more deeper than what most of the people know. In the 90s already, well, we could go back to the 80s, but let's put it simple. In the 90s, NBA is arriving on CCTV5, MTV China is born too, and the Western culture, and mainly at that time, the American hip hop, has been conveyed through the Chinese mediascape, with the benediction of the Chinese state to Chinese youth. At that time, that was not an issue that's going to get more complicated later. But the fact is, with the development of new technologies, with the development of internet, and American cultural products arriving on the Chinese screens, then Chinese youth is more and more in touch with hip hop culture and rap music. In the late 90s, I would say, 90s, early 2000s, we will have the first great bands or famous bands, hip hop bands, Chinese hip hop bands, like hiphop in Shanghai or Incheon in Beijing. That would be kind of the precursors, the first OGs, as we would call them now, to bring and to create a hip hop with Chinese characteristics. Around the same time, in 2001, 2002, Dana Showtime Burton created the Iron Mic. So the Iron Mic was a contest, MCing contest that was mainly underground and still exists today, and has is freestyle hip hop, right? So just like what we Western audience probably got to know with the movie 8 Miles, that's basically the same that is happening in China. And thanks to these first precursors, the hip hop scene is going to expand. At first, it's really like in the east coast of China. So you will have like Shanghai, Beijing. After that, it's going to move. And then in the 2000s, you're going to discover new regional crews. We have Kipril, that is going to become Gosh in Chongqing. You have Big Zoo in Chengdu. You have C Block in Changsha. And around the 2000, between 2000 and 2005, 8, and 10, you will have those huge regional gathering of young people that have been bathed into hip hop and that are going to infuse the music with local particularities, local flavors. That's going to bring the very special taste and richness of the Chinese hip hop scene today. So of course, after that arrives the rap of China, and well, if it needs to be reminded, and maybe people here don't know about it, it has been kind of an earthquake in the media landscape in China, but also for the hip hop community in its whole, because 2017. Aichi is releasing the first season of a contest where Chinese young rappers confront each other in order to, well, basically elect the best rapper of China, right? This is mostly copied from Show Me the Money. So it's a Korean TV show. So the concept isn't new, it existed before, but in China, it has never been seen. And from one day to another, it has gathered such attention from the youth. It has been a huge hip hop wave flooding China. And we have, I think, in the end, the first season reached about 3 billion views. 3 billion views. That was amazing. And it kind of like brought hip hop to the mainstream, brought rap music into the light, and brought rappers on real stages. That was the one step that made Chinese hip hop mainstream. And 2017, we also have to remember the context. It was Rap of China, but it was also the release of an album that is probably going to shake also the history of Chinese hip hop. That is Black Cab, has been released in May 2017. So this album by the Higher Brothers, the four people band, 4 people rappers band in Sichuan, in Chengdu. And I say it's going to shake the hip hop scene because actually they're going to meet an impressive success, and not only inside in mainland China, but they're going to go in America, and they're going to sign partnership with 88 Rising, and they're going to travel to America, and this is going to be kind of the window to the world on what was going on with Chinese hip hop at that time. And so all these events gathering make 2017, of course, a very, very important year for Chinese hip hop. And so it's going to grow inside, it's going to grow in mainland, it's going to grow outside. So people are going to give more and more attention to Chinese rappers until, of course, this 2018 ban, which is probably going to make somehow Chinese hip hop even more famous, right? Countless articles in the international press stating that China is banning hip hop, China is censoring hip hop, etc., which in a way is the case. Well, like the state administration of radio, of film and television, right, it was in January 2018. And Nathanel, you're the professional on this topic because you wrote a piece about it. Well, edited a piece stating that Chinese rappers were somehow obscene, vulgar, and they will not like bringing the positive energy that the state demands to the art, right? So this ban is going to turn off the light on the Chinese hip hop scene. But just like any ban in the cultural history of China is going to be temporary. At that time, we couldn't know, but now we know that few months later only, well, Chinese rappers that disappeared from TV shows, disappeared from stages, right? They were barred to have concerts, they were barred to participate on national TV events, but they reappeared. They reappeared in a sanitized way somehow. They reappeared under a different mask. So this is like what makes probably Chinese hip hop more and more interesting with the years. It's like, it's not a one-line story. It's a lot of different happenings that is shaping the landscape. And we had the 90s, where it was mostly underground, and the 2000s, where it was mostly underground, only listened to by Chinese kids with international background or international knowledge or access. Then came the time of Rap of China, and where everyone discovered that China has hip hop, right? And the ban to, well, basically today, 2020, when TV shows reappeared, Chinese rappers reappeared in the mediascape, up to the point that one of them is invited to the CCTV Spring Festival, right? So it was in January 2020, Baoshoujian. And for those who don't know what that means, like the CCTV Spring Festival Gala is the most watched. It's basically the TV show, the most watched show on Earth, basically. And it's also a window for China, the Chinese authorities, for the Chinese government to broadcast what is China at that time. And they integrate, it's the most watched and probably the most framed show on Earth. And they integrated so rappers, Baoshoujian, and this only 2 years after the ban. So that means like from hip hop went from the underground, the very deep underground, unknown and outcasts, to the very deep fame. Chinese rappers changed their standard until they reached the growl of the Chinese audiovisuals, CCTV Spring Festival Gala. So this is basically in very short and synthesized way to explain the trajectory of Chinese hip hop.
Thank you, Grégoire, on this short history of Chinese hip hop, which leads us now to my next question about the reaction to COVID-19 per se. So, can you give us some precision on the impact of COVID in the early days of the pandemic on the Chinese music scene and how it affected the hip hop musical world? Maybe we can start by giving a few brief overview of the important dates of the pandemic in China in the early day, and the impact on the music scene, of course, and for example, the live venues or the home studios and the hip hop scene again.
Of course, yeah. I think there's two important things that we need to discuss here. The first thing is to say a word about how COVID impacted the music world in China. Well, worldwide, and we're still, I mean, in France, we're still into it, right? I haven't been to a concert since, well, a long time, too long. So one thing is to say about like the impact of COVID on music. That is also a way to understand how the practitioners of music are reacting to this unwilling event. The second thing we need to talk about is to come back on a very short and simple, again, timetable of the pandemic, because what I discuss in this article is very contextualized. And it is contextualized in a way that in an event that most of the people want to forget, right? I don't know anyone who would like to remember these horrible times. And so it comes easily blur into our mind when it comes to dates, when it comes to what comes first and what comes next. So I'm going to try to give a few words on the two topics, just to bring it back to the memory and understand better the reactions. When everything started, let's say in the first month of January and in the first month of 2020, so January, February 2020, because this is when it happened in China, right? In the West, in France at that time, everything was perfectly fine until April. When it happened, I made some researches on the impact, the financial impact, and in terms of live music, live venues, etc. I got some figures given by the press stating that between January and March 2020, it was about 20,000 concerts that have been canceled in China. Basically, when the shutdown, when the lockdown has been put on Wuhan, then at that time, every live venues closed the doors and the shows were canceled, right? It was basically what we would experience later in the West. So 20,000 shows canceled. And at that time, in the beginning of the year 2020, the loss for the music industry was estimated around 2 billion renminbi. 2 billion renminbi, that makes 260 million euros. So that was a big loss. Of course, all the live performances have been canceled, and live performances represent a big part of the revenue of Chinese rappers. They have advertising endorsement. This is a big part of their revenue, but playing in festivals, touring in China, this is also bringing them a lot of financial support, right? So from one day to another, they basically lose, I wouldn't say 50% because it's not 50-50, but like a big part of their revenue. Of course, in China, just like in the West, music turned online, live streaming parties, there has been live festivals on Bilibili, like I think about Strawberry Seed Festival. There has been disco parties, what we call disco parties on Kuaishu. There has been clubs. After a certain time, Chinese clubs would turn the party online, right? And also at that time, we were talking about the big money involved in these things, because people running the places, of course, lost everything from one day to another with the closing. But thanks to cloud disco parties, they would raise a lot of money at once, and people would say Hongba, like the red envelopes, and gives donation to the music venues, support them. But the artists are somehow different from the venues, I discussed with a lot of them at that time, to make sure they were okay and to understand how it was, because I wasn't in China. I was located in Canada at that time, and I was stuck in Canada without being able to come back to China. So I discussed with my friends, musicians, and it felt like even though they were at home, even though they had time for creation, they had time to think, that this is something also, this is, or that was a generally shared idea that they have time, and this is the time where you can work on your next album. This is the time where you can learn to play ukulele and listen to someone else's masterpiece in order to create. But creation in that environment, and it was like moral panic, right? We didn't know what happened. The cities were closed. People were forced to stay indoor. It didn't work that well. It wasn't like a creative a vibe. So let's say like everything closed from one day to another. You don't have the mojo to create, you don't have the creativity that comes to you. And even though music moved online, then this is not the same thing. So that leaves us with like not many things. And substantially, you're gonna lose money because you're not gonna make money. And you don't have like, you're not a state-sponsored artist. So you're probably gonna lose a lot of money and you have no perspectives. That's probably the most important thing here. You don't know when this is going to stop and if it's going to stop, and you don't really know if art is going to save you that time. We're on something much deeper. But what hip-hop artists have as an asset in that period is that the creation of hip-hop, the creation of rap music, is mostly digitalized. So if you have a home studio, which is basically if you have a mic, a computer, and an internet connection, you can make something out. Hip-hop, when it arrived in China, it arrived thanks to the internet somehow, thanks to the communication networks that enable Chinese youth to go on video website, on music website, to listen to their counterparts, to get influenced, to exchange beats, ideas. And this hasn't stopped with the pandemic. The network was still here, the people were still here, they were locked down. So a good thing for rappers, and that also explains why they have been so mobilized, is that they could continue create and they could use their material and their equipment to share a message. And that's what they did, well, more easily than, I don't know, like an opera or a trumpet player. It was much more easy for a rapper to take the mic and to write something, whatever the situation. Next to this, maybe we should give a little insight on the timetable of the very beginning of 2020. So on January 23rd, 2020, the Chinese authority decided the lockdown of Wuhan. So this is where my study started. This is about that time where we all realized that it was something serious going on. And this is about the time where I opened my computer to look for the creation of Chinese rappers. Everybody remembers probably that time. Well, this is the start. January 23rd, February the 2nd is also another important time when do you remember the hospital in Wuhan called Wuhan got built up, and it was this hospital built in 10 days. A lot of pictures in the international media, in national media, and you're going to see in rap music too, have been shared of this like very, very fast hospital built in Wuhan, 10 days to build up such a big hospital. And that is going to be everywhere later in the pictures. This is a hot topic, a hot moment of the beginning of the pandemic. So the Wuhan lockdown, the construction of the hospital, and of course, the death of Li Wenliang on February the 7th. And this is also going to be a shift in the handling of the pandemic, in the discussion of people, in the mobilization of artists, and in the story, in the narration of the crisis. Maybe just a word on Li Wenliang, if someone doesn't know. Well, Li Wenliang is the ophthalmologist that first raised concern about more and more pneumonia that were happening in the region of Hubei. And that has been blamed by the local police for perpetrating rumors. He has been asked to stop sharing those wrong information and to try to create chaos, basically. And in the end, doing his job, so saving lives, he caught COVID and died out of it. So on the February the 7th, basically in the night between the 6th and the 7th. So the death of Li Wenliang, and until later, April 8th, lifting of the lockdown, basically it's kind of the end of the pandemic in China. May the 8th, so one month later, you have the reopening of indoor spaces, cultural spaces in China. And September the 8th, Xi Jinping declares the success in the people's war against coronavirus. Well, my study is only focused on the first month of the pandemic. So it goes from the 23rd of January 2020, when the lockdown has been started, until the 26th of February 2020. So this is what I'm interested in. But basically, if you want a larger timetable, it goes from January to September, and then officially, and there's no more coronavirus in China, right?
Yeah. Thank you for this timetable. It's clearer for everyone, like, to understand the first month from the pandemics and its impact on the music scene. So, was there any what we can call opportunistic songs about the COVID-19 in the rap scene? I mean, using the pandemic as a more mercantile way of, showing off and selling albums or titles, using pandemic themes at the beginning.
Yes, definitely. There was when I gathered the corpus of 21 songs that has been released in this month of the pandemic. The first task maybe was to spot which one was a true commitment to the message and which one was a fake commitment or an opportunistic use of the pandemic in order to, well, stay on the scene, sell your next album. And this is basically like a couple of them happened. So I'm going to talk about two of them that really, it made me uncomfortable somehow to face this kind of creation. The first one is called Koja, is Mask. So it's been released on the 19th February 2020, and it has been made by Maziwei and Nono, that are two very, very famous rappers in China, because they are part of the Chengdu Higher Brothers band. So this song is, well, when you look at the cover, right, it talks about mask with the hurt, and you understand in February 2020 that it's going to be linked to the pandemic. And I mean, everything is in the title, right? At that time, there was a war on masks. There was a moral panic around masks, surrounding masks. We're gonna lack masks. We don't have enough masks. Maybe masks are useless or useful. Well, that was like the heat of the debate. And so you think when you see this song being released, you think about a song that's going to deal with the pandemic and the mask, right? Actually, not at all. And this is very disappointing. So despite the chorus of this song, where Maziwei says very sugary lyrics, we have nothing about the pandemic. It just goes like something like, I will give you a mask. When the epidemic broke out, my love was the antidote. So you very soon realize that despite all the fuss and all the focus on the pandemic and the pandemic symbolic topics, well, it's not at all about it. And then what makes me uncomfortable is that it has been released exactly 7 days before the new album of Maziwei called Hema Wanzi is going to be released a week later. And then you realize that this song kind of works like an appeal product where that takes the pandemic as an excuse to sell your next, and it was the first album of Maziwei. So it's only advertisement made on the back of the pandemic, and it has not much value. And actually the fans online also criticize a lot of this song. And I remember an article that titled, "It was so enabled and it makes you want to cry." Actually, it was the case. A second case of opportunistic takes on the COVID was another song called "Life is Beautiful" that has been recorded by 4 rappers. And here's the cover. So you have Dog 2, JC, who are South Korean rappers and artists, and Vava and Wang Yitai, who are both rappers from Sichuan. And the fact that this song was recorded maybe too professionally made it lose its authenticity in the involvement of artists into a charity action. So Life is Beautiful has been recorded in a studio, in a recording studio in Los Angeles, Yellow Money Records. And those rappers are among the most famous ones. So they are signed with record companies, and the whole broadcast of their song, which has been accompanied by short videos showing them sharing support, etc., makes it look like it's too much bureaucratic organization that is making it lose its authenticity, okay? They are not in China, and they send a message. Of course, I don't take anything from their solidarity message and their strong desire to support the people in China. But I think I remember at that time I counted like on the social media there were about like 17 or 18 publications. It was backed up by Warner Music China. It was too much. It was too much. And if we make a link with charity rock here, like some scholars that studied charity rock pointed out the fact that if your action doesn't look like an authentic, urgent, and free act of dedication, then it's going to lose authenticity, and then it's going to lose its truth, actually, and people are not going to buy it, right? So this is what has been called useful works. That's what how I would talk about those songs. Despite the fact that maybe they share a true feeling, it looks like it is more useful for the artist to do such a thing in order to stay under the lights, in order to gain a symbolic capital in the eyes of the fans, in the eyes of the authorities, and in the eyes of the music industrials. And this has been kind of like making me feel uncomfortable during the pandemic. This is some examples of opportunistic use of the sanitary disaster.
Thanks. So in your article, you also highlight the importance of the figure of the doctor in early songs about the COVID. So was it a safer way to talk about the crisis, to highlight the consensual figure of the doctors or the frontline medical staff fighting the epidemics in these early songs, or were they talking about medical staff and the first responders and all that?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. In the first songs, and basically in many songs, and actually, even before talking about songs, like when I recorded the reactions of rappers online on Weibo and on other platforms, a lot of the people were mobilizing in order to help people that are in Hubei, but also people working in Hubei and in hospitals, so medical workers. For instance, one example comes in mind, like Gosh. They mobilized their fan base very heavily in order to raise funds to give them to the hospitals in Chongqing and elsewhere too. When it comes to music, of course, the doctors are heavily present in the lyrics and heavily emphasized, whether it is as a hero or as a fighter, a strong fighter against a virus that would be the enemy, right? Just like if we were in a battle. What is interesting with the ideas of heroes, it is that it puts the figure of the doctor as someone sharing the positive energy that the state demands to the art in China. And if we take one song, and we can take the first song that has been dedicated to workers, it's a song called Heroes, entitled Heroes, that has been released on the 5th of February 2020 by JFog. So here the covers. This is the first song that is dedicated to, frankly dedicated to doctors, and it has been motivated. JFog explains that when he saw that doctors everywhere in China were going voluntarily into Hubei to help each other and to help the population, he got moved and wrote this song. What is interesting is in his way to discuss heroes, to discuss doctors. He's going to use terms, he's going to use metonymies, he's going to use metaphors that we can find everywhere else in the Chinese society at that time, and especially in the state media. He's not going to talk about doctors, right? He's going to talk about white coats, Baisodakwa. He's going to talk about heroes in white coats. He's going to talk about white angels. And a lot of rap, a lot of songs have a lot of rappers have used those terms, like very broad terms and very positive terms to describe the doctors. And maybe we can watch the music video that has been released a week later, and then we can discuss a little bit more about the use of such terms.
Hubei 省武汉市等多个地区发生新型冠状病毒感染的肺炎疫情，累计报告新型冠状病毒感染的肺炎确诊病例224例，571例，830例，1287例，17205例，20438例。
来不及说道别，你心上前线。没有敌人的战争看不见硝烟， 与时间赛跑，无日无夜无条件。They are my heroes，
于2月3号承担武汉火神山医院医疗救治任务。
爸爸，你很勇敢，我们要向你学习。
你要照顾自己，马上就向前。白色大褂代表我自身的风险，来不及解释，一往无前。
这一批都是了不起的医生，他们这样子把自己暴露在这个疾病的前面，暴露在病毒的前面。
我觉得这个事情离我们每个人都不遥远。作为我们医务人员来说的话，都是我们应该尽的责任。
白色衣服的英雄义无反顾对抗疫情，我心痛。他们松开了挚爱的手，挡在了最前方的危险中。没有什么能冲散一心的万众，一切在掌控。加油武汉，加油中国，加油英雄！从我出生的那天就看到白色的天使在身边，他们默默地守护着我们，不论是黑夜或白天。感恩你们的付出和所有的彻夜和无眠，在这里送上最真诚的祝福和祈愿。
这一辈子我为了啥？我不就几个病人吗？
Heroes， 勇往直前 ，Heroes， 不惧艰险 ，Heroes， 你要安全回来，等你凯旋 ，Heroes， 勇往直前 ，Heroes， 不惧艰险 ，Heroes， 你要安全回来，等你凯旋。
137名白衣天使啊，致以崇高的敬意。然后呢，作为机组呢，我们会认真准备，精细飞行，保证这次包机任务的顺利完成。有一句刚才这个我说是非常流行的一句话：“千里赴疫区，关山度若飞”啊。我们祝愿白衣天使们能顺利的归来。 啊，就说这些啊。
我也希望咱们一切飞行能够顺利，希望您载着我们这些壮士能够平安顺利的飞抵湖北。
好，谢谢你，向白衣天使致敬啊，
谢谢。
Heroes， 勇往直前 ，Heroes， 不惧艰险 ，Heroes， 你要安全回来。 Heroes， 勇往直前 ，Heroes， 不惧艰险 ，Heroes， 你要安全回来，等你凯旋。
Here we go. So this music video is very interesting to me because J.R. Fogg is building up here a narration centered around the doctors, so the heroes, and just like the lyrics are important, the pictures are also very important. The pictures matter because they have been chosen, crafted in order to accompany the music. And they are very meaningful too. Basically, about the lyrics, this is an ode to doctors, right? Heroes, let's go. Heroes, go forward. Heroes are not afraid of danger. Come back safely. We're waiting for your return, etc., etc. When it comes to pictures, of course, this MV that has been released on the 11th of February is crafted thanks to media pictures. And on some of the pictures, you can spot the Remy Rebar, the People's Daily logo. So you know, like everything comes from the media. Everyone would have, like, people would look at China at that time, would recognize, like, so as I said, the construction of the hospital. There are several figures that come back, like, for instance, Zhong Nanshan, who is the guy in the very middle of this poster, that is like the hero of the SARS, the most famous pneumologist in China. And the rhythm and the rhythm of the music and the rhythm of the image and the narration that is crafted through the image is giving an idea of China that is mobilized. China is the official workers, state workers, whether it is like PLA soldiers or doctors or workers that are building the hospital in 10 days, they are mobilized in the fight against the virus. And despite the doctor that disappear behind very large white note, like white outfits of the doctors, in the images, they're always shown as human beings, right? They are not, they don't appear too impacted by the crisis physically yet. It's going to evolve in other productions, but here they have the fist raised, they hug each other, they write each other their names on their outfits, so they are very rehumanized. So it's also sharing a very positive idea of the crisis, right? Heroes go to the war and come back safely, and we will succeed in this war against COVID. Let's have a word about the propaganda posters at the end of this music video. So this is the last pictures of the video. Actually, the right one is the last picture. The left one comes from so the People's Daily, and they published it on Twitter on the 7th of February 2020. And it is very interesting, and it's struck me because it really looks like old-time propaganda posters, right? Anyone who has been to the Shanghai Propaganda Poster Art Center here, which is a very beautiful museum in Shanghai, would realize like how these posters look like old propaganda. You have people mixed. You have all the most important symbolic elements of Wuhan in this poster. You have the name of the two hospitals. You have the Yellow Crane Tower. You have, of course, Zhong Nanshan that is above everyone because he saved China from the SARS. So he is like the top leader, doctor, that is going to also get involved in COVID. And then you have, of course, medical workers. And you have this trio of people. So at the bottom, the worker, the doctor, and the soldier. That is somehow, like, to me, the new triangle of the PRC during the pandemic. Mao Zedong used to say in his talks in Wuhan in 1942 that culture should be for the worker, the peasant, and the soldier. And this is basically that trio made the basis of the development of the PRC under Mao Zedong. And it feels like this new trio today would be during the pandemic, the worker, the doctor, and the soldier. And of course, what is at the bottom, the base of China, the base of this huge tower supporting the fight against the COVID, of course, is the PLA. And a big plane that could symbolize sending medical supplies inside, in mainland, but also outside. That is all the elements in this music video is come to feed the official tale of the fight against the virus, and it's going to feed the official narration of the victory over the virus. It's going to help shaping further later the story, the Chinese story of the victory in the People's War. And I think that is full of symbols here. actually, I've tried to find out who were the people that are pretty well clear. I mean, their faces are pretty clear on this drawing. So if anyone following us on YouTube recognize someone, it would likely be, to me, famous doctors, probably localized, or famous politicians. But I didn't succeed in recognizing any other face than Zhong Nanshan. And I would be very curious to know who they are, because as you can see, they have been changed. The first one is the one by the People's Daily on the left, and on the right one, some new faces appeared, and I'm pretty curious to know who that is. That being said, and to finish with this hero thing, doctor thing, but with the choice of the pictures, and this is where I believe the pictures matter a lot. At that time, we had different pictures of the crisis. Using broad terms, unclear terms to talk about doctors is a good strategy to avoid taking position and to mention doctors specifically. And when I say mention doctors, why do they talk about white coats and they don't talk about Li Wenliang or Zhong Nanshan? Zhong Nanshan appears a lot, but then they decide to put Zhong Nanshan here and not talk about other doctors. It gives a ground for rappers not to take position in naming doctors. The CCP named doctors, right? They talked a lot about Zhong Nanshan, and they talked very much less about Li Wenliang, but they also talk about other doctors. Like, for example, there was this woman called Xu Hui, who was the deputy head of Nanjing Hospital and who died after 18 days working. And it's always a question of choice. And remaining broad when talking about doctors is a way, to me, to avoid taking position and to avoid backlash, either from your fan base or from the authorities. The question of pictures, you could have taken pictures from citizen journalists like Fang Bing or Chen Qiushi, but it hasn't been the case, and no one would do so, and for obvious reasons. But taking pictures from People's Daily is also a choice you need to assume, and that is perpetrating a narration that you have chosen to craft. So here we see that talking about doctors and crafting such music videos is helping the official narration of the crisis, and is helping keeping a positive mindset on something that will turn eventually into a pandemic and go all over the world.
Thanks. So speaking about doctors, what was the consequence of the death of Li Wenliang in the lyrics of the Chinese rappers at the time? Can we find after Li Wenliang's death more critical songs after his death, criticizing the gesture by the Communist Party or by the state or by the local government? Did it have an impact on the hip hop scene?
I think Li Wenliang's death is a milestone for everyone, whether you're an artist or just a citizen or even just an observer of China. Actually, more than his death alone, the handling of the crisis made the production of music shift somewhere around the second week. So in the 2 first weeks of the pandemic, the vocabulary that is being used is very positive, is very optimistic, and you can feel it in the lyrics, you can feel it in the titles and also in the pictures that are used, whether as a cover or as music video. But after the second week, so let's say around, the death of Li Guanliang is on the 7th of February, but around 7th to 10th of February, more and more problems are arriving in China. So the resources that have been received by associations are not distributed properly. The death of Li Guanliang raised concerns online. There was this time where the hashtag I want freedom of speech appeared massively on Weibo and social network, Chinese social networks, to the extent that has barely been seen in the modern history of China, where people were voicing discontent towards this story, towards the handling of the crisis, and toward the society. And actually, intellectuals also started to release papers targeting directly, actually, Xi Jinping in a way that has barely been seen before too. So all this change, I mean, all these societies change, and all these bad news, bad events, and criticism, etc., led to an evolution in the song, an evolution in the vocabulary. So we're going to have more negative terms used, like we're going to talk about blindness, we're going to talk about degenerate, we're going to talk about nightmare, adventure, empty city. So this is way different from just wishing good luck that we had in the first place. And we're gonna have songs and artists that are gonna be more realistic or more pessimistic about the situation, more critic about the situation, and that's gonna involve, that's gonna have repercussion. We're gonna have songs that will be censored. The censorship is going to come back, because in the first place, none of the songs had been censored. We're going to have censored songs. We're going to have problems to upload songs online, and we're going to have self-censorship. Maybe before discussing all of this, we can watch one of these songs. It's can we watch "Should I Say I Love You" by JD? So this song has been released on the 26th of February by JD. JD is pretty famous now because he's from Beijing and he went to Rap of China, but very lately he turned out to be the winner of one of the new TV show dedicated to rap music, 说唱听我的. So end of February, he released this song, Should I Say I Love You? And let's talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah, show me love. 当灾难降临之后，没理由再可乐。祈求苍天能保佑，回忆副团聚的话，讲一通寒暄的话，配一配坦白的吧，覆盖掉网络的骂。当死亡来的突然告别，没时间准备。我风雨前的记得，谁教我如何突围？谁有见过在夜里有比这珍奇的万家灯火，可还是有破裂的屋檐下燃起白色的烛火？又何曾看到消失的微笑都被蒙上灰白的布？何处有解药？何时能再次登台为你展现王者的酷？我不停百度，何时能踏上通往武汉的路？我不太确定是否要把罪都推给蝙蝠，但不想读到关于悼念和剩下的 Say I love you if I haven't seen you before. Should I say I love you if I haven't seen you before? 记得都不要逃，给自己个拥抱。记得都不要逃，给自己个拥抱。再问再当疫情过后，你最想要见到
到谁？如果是世界末日的话，你该说的对，他说了没？身边逝去的阵痛，脚步由轻而变笨重，除非从天堂来电，手机不会引领在阵痛。而我依然坚信天使的白能够驱散漫天飞，我肆虐人间的灰色。能够切到战役成功的才宣告解封，你我不再隔离，空气已清楚，我的存在解脱。最不想看到刷满屏的 Rest in Peace， 等待个结果。别给我经历等词汇拆散了彼此，留下那失落证据，见窗外冰冷的光亮，让各自能够治愈。眼旁白，嘴角轻上扬，记得并不退去，情人节要为他补上，而我能再次拿起麦克，再次为你演唱。Should I say I love you if I haven't seen you before? Should I say I love you if I haven't seen you before? 记得都不要逃，给自己个拥抱。记得都不要逃，给自己个拥抱。Show me love, even I haven't seen you before. Show me love, even I haven't seen you before. Show me love, even I haven't seen you before. Show me love, even I haven't seen you before. Show me love, show me love, show me love, show me love. Show me love, show me love, show me love, show me love. Should I say I love you if I haven't seen you before? Should I say I love you if I haven't seen you before?
Right, thank you very much. So here's about this song. We have about the same elements that we can find in the previous song we saw, but it's somehow different. I think it emphasizes more normal people in contrast to state worker. We see much more like people, like random people, normal people in the Chinese society. I said songs are gonna get into like more trouble. They're gonna face more trouble to be uploaded online, to be broadcast in China after the second week. Well, this song from JD is one example of a song that has been blocked and that has been voluntarily changed in order to access internet. So he wrote this song and then uploaded it on Wang Yingyun. So Wang Yingyun is like the one of the Chinese Spotify. It's a music platform, music online platform, and music streaming platform. Sorry. And while trying to upload his song, JD faced problems. And actually, what is interesting is that he wrote down all these problems in a Weibo post that is now disappeared. And I'm gonna tell you, I just did a very quick English translation of what he's saying in this post. He says, I downloaded my new song, Should I Say I Love You, around 8 p.m. yesterday night. I tried 2 normal downloads. After succeeding, the album has been deleted in a few seconds. The song disappeared and I tried to replace the so-called sensitive words. I tried once again and the result was the same. I tried to download without the lyrics and the song has been directly rejected. Can you give me a reason? What is wrong with my song lyrics? So, of course, this post has been deleted after that JD realized that a couple of words could not be said anymore on the Chinese internet. And I listed the words for you because actually what is pretty interesting and easy to do is to look on the Chinese platforms and then to go on the YouTube post. And as you've seen in the video, nothing is missing. But actually, if you're in China and you're listening on a streaming platform, in the lyrics part, you're gonna see the right part of the screen here. Little dots. Little dots are very interesting because so one star represents one character missing, right? So it gives you an idea of how many characters. And actually, if you're an original one, you can even try to guess what's missing. This was what brought also trouble to a writer that is pretty famous now in China, Jia Pinghua, who had released a book called Decadent Capital in 1993, and who did the same. Actually, he deleted words and he put some empty squares, and he voluntarily expressed the self-censorship in order to, bring a sense of our originality and play with the censors also. So he used to write his book and states, here the authors deleted 32 characters. And then people tried to recreate what was missing. And of course, it is a book about, that deals a lot about sex. And at that time and still today, this was not possible. So it gives us an example in the past and now what is being done in the music during the pandemic. So JD had taken down the characters and the words that work as a threat in the eyes of the censors. And actually, all the words that he took down from his song, I wrote them on the left side of the screen. So you have disaster, death, virus, to burst, crime, to mourn, to lose, campaign, and to break up. So as you can see, those are all negatives, very negative words. And it also shows that there is an evolution in the censorship. Virus, Bindu, was in the previous songs and it was not an issue. And 2 weeks later, we can't say virus anymore that openly in the song. There has been another strategy that was used by other rappers, was to use the pinyin capital letters of some terms. For instance, you take Wuhan, and instead of saying Wuhan, you can say WH, or Bingdu, BD, which is virus. Of course, in your song, you're going to leave it properly, the way you say it. But the lyrics don't matter that much in the song, or at least not as much as when it is written. So one reason why JD's song has been successfully uploaded after all this trouble is because he took down the sensitive words. And actually, there's a very interesting, if you're interested in this topic of hiding words or double language, what Séverine Arsène discussed as opaque language. There is a very interesting paper in Amnesty International that focused on how youth in the beginning of the pandemic in China have used secret or encoded language in order to convey their message while the internet was more and more watched by the authorities. And another example of this opaque language and these hidden transcriptions is a song by a very famous rapper here called MC Guang Guang. And this rapper is like, he's a veteran of hip hop. He's from Nanjing. He's now a judge in a TV show, the same TV show, JD won, 说唱听我的. Most of the people in the hip hop scene know him and know how straightforward and frank he could be. And his song is a precise and concrete example of how to circumvent the censorship and how to share a message, a true, authentic message, encoded behind lyrics that are not posing any threat. maybe we can listen to the song. What do you think, Nathanel? Yeah. So this song is called Blind Man, right? Shazi, and he's gonna discuss about, well, you'll see, we'll talk about the lyrics after.
I'm a blind man. I'm a blind man. And my world is pale. I'm a blind man.
Hey.
I'm a blind man.
Right.
And my world is pale.
请你别说了，别说了，请你别说了，别说了。我像个瞎子，只能够看到你想让我看到的那些编造的、颠倒的，你是怎么办到的？本有着最强大的潜力，正当在最强壮的年纪去发挥全力，才不料到你为了那点权利留在原地，有的会被别人嫌弃，怎么会走到这步田地？前期的严密，前期的全剧，可是变得不同，学会糊弄，决定霸占便宜。是谁在幕后养着主角，还在假装甜蜜？你难道真的认为这样下去还能痊愈？你是否想过自己能活几个世纪？十足的把握，把心老伤口都治愈。可能文字多了，嗡少一个文字狱。你说这就是你给自己定的新秩序，你都是对的，你做的所有决定永远都是对的。你要我做的无非就是闭着好好配合。我懂你意思，懂你意思。有些事就算我看到，也当没看到。炽热的心这么搞混碎的。别说了，别说了，请你别说了，别说了。我像个瞎子，只能够看到你想让我看到的那些编造的、颠倒的，你是怎么办到的？别说了，别说了，请你别说了，别说了。我像个瞎子，只能够看到你想让我看到的那些个编造的、颠倒的，你是怎么办到的？这个阵都乱套了，乱套了，敷衍的半吊子，演完戏就散掉吧。谁乱喊乱叫着，谁又偷偷赚到了？想法都烂掉了，你害怕才想干掉。我重新先修改自己的记忆，把不美丽的片段当成垃圾文件按下 delete， 扔掉的笔记，我只是打个比喻。你面色从容，在这方面有足够的底气，我又能怎样呢？说到底怎样呢？曾经我真的认可你已经做得很棒了，可现在瞧瞧你的嘴脸，这副狠样子。少年时意气风发，现如今怎忘了？我多么希望还像从前一样给你我的爱，是你并不需要了，还是你改变得太快？即便是此刻，我依然希望你赢回我的心，可你却让我别看那些，让我闭上眼睛。请你别说了，别说了，请你别说了，别说了。我像个瞎子，只能够看到你想让我看到的那些编造。
There we go. So we can stop here because it's gonna repeat afterwards. In terms of opaque language, MC Guang is a very good champion, and I think it's probably the most interesting piece we can find in this corpus, because he is never using the words related to the pandemic. He's not talking about Wuhan, he's not talking about the virus, he's not talking about China at that time. He crafts a very specific tale that he could be talking to anyone, right? He could be talking to a woman, he could be talking to a friend. But when you know the time it is being released, so on the 13th of February 2020, and you read carefully the lyrics, because he avoids in a pretty smart way to give pictures to his song. So when you focus on the lyrics, then you can try to transcribe what he means. And so as you can see on the left part, this is the chorus. It says, please stop talking, stop talking. I'm like a blind man who can only see what you want me to see. How could you have made those fabricated and distorted words? I mean, this is very specific. It's specific to this time in China. It's very unlikely, and it would be very naive to think that the message that he encodes is unable to be decoded by its audience. It's very likely that the people that listen to MC Guang understand fully what he's talking about, and he's talking about the pandemic here. And then he goes much harsher, saying like maybe buzzing mosquitoes need a mosquito jail. He's also talking about someone who claims to want your good, but is cultivating the vermin behind the scene. He's talking about ugly face, and he's talking about someone, once again, who wants to change, once again, its own past. It's hard not to see in those lyrics, even though no one, and especially MC Guangguang, will never acknowledge who was behind those words, but it's hard not to understand a pretty direct criticism addressed to the Chinese society, the authorities, Xi Jinping himself. Well, no one will ever know, but actually the song conveys very, very strongly this feeling, which make me think that this is probably the strongest criticism we can find in rap during the pandemic.
Thank you. I'm going to take a question from the audience because it's related to what you said earlier. So someone is asking, does those performers who addressed COVID-19 in their freshly released music that conformed to the party's narrative about the virus received any backlash from their fan base on social media?
That's a good question. On social media, I haven't noticed such backlash. I haven't noticed such backlash because I think one of the reasons is that first, their fan base is following them on this. Also, the mindset, the general mindset when those rappers took part into the official narration was about the same. I would say it's different temporalities. As I said before, in the first 2 weeks, I think no one would have had the material or the sufficient background to criticize openly people that would share positive energy. You know, like in those songs, they go to support the people, they support the doctors. It's never, in this corpus, I've never found a very direct and univoc support to the authorities or to people who would have done wrong. And this is also why it's, I mean, beside the opportunistic commercial use of music, it would be hard to criticize them at the time they happen, because like that was a time where people also probably needed to hear this support and to see that they are taken into account by musicians and people. Also, one asset of charity song and charity rock is that it is very contextualized and in a very small, in a very short time period. So it probably gained quite some attention at the moment they got released. But here, I'm pretty sure in the month, right after the month I studied, most of the songs have been forgotten. And so none of them have become a hot topic on the internet, being destroyed by hardcore fans that would say, this is not what hip hop is made for, or this is, you're supporting the wrong team. No, there was no public backlash. Like I think netizens were like not in this mood at that time.
And maybe the backlash was more on the commercial use of the COVID-19 as No and Masoe Koja song.
Yeah, this one there was. There has been newspaper articles directly aiming at the opportunistic movement.
So I'm going to continue with my own question. So do you see mobilization of rappers in other parts of the Sinophone world? And if yes, what are the topics and the themes that are mobilized by these rappers outside of China in the Chinese-speaking world?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and this is a point I left aside from this paper because, well, I was focused on mainland, and also for a reason that's pretty obvious. At that time, in the first month, well, it was only, I mean, the virus was only in mainland, right? Well, maybe not, but that's what we thought. But there has been reactions in other countries. There has been reactions by Chinese people in the diasporas in North America, and of course there has been a reaction in Taiwan and in Hong Kong. And yeah, let's say a word about it. Maybe let's start with Taiwan. And I'm going to talk under your light because you know Taiwan much more than I do. But one song that has been that made quite the headlines actually when it has been released was a song by Dwagi, so Daje, who's a Taiwanese rapper, an old school Taiwanese. He's been here for quite a long time. And actually, I made some research because I didn't know much about Dwagi, and it seems like he did some collaboration with Nas and Raikkoon from the Wu-Tang. So it seems to me he's pretty much of a big act. So he is also very pro-Taiwan in his music and in his life. And he has released 2 songs related to coronavirus. The first one called WHO, that he pronounces Wu, and the second one about 2 months later. So the first one is released in February, and the second one in April of the same year, called XJP virus, for Xi Jinping virus. And he goes pretty harsh. What I propose is we listen to WHO and we talk about it.
Hell for all, why leaving no one behind? Things politics matter when the human lies on the line. Hell for all, why leaving no one behind? It's gonna help with my people's always here all the time. Give us the sign. On the internet, they reported that people living in Wuhan sick. Some kind of virus, some kind of sickness. New thing coming from a full market. Then they turn around, they're in all the bar. News is coming out, now it's fake. Covered up praise, stress that everything's under control and everyone's safe. Then we saw a case and another case, cause you know it spread really fast. Everybody race to a safe place, never coming out with their face in a mask. School and work delay, how many hurt today? Horror movie, infected bodies, I mean how many dead can we burn in graves? Waiting in line for the hospital, they ain't even built yet, sick by the minute. Some escape by another place, they ain't been here, why cause they want another clinic? What is fiction a fact? Is it sickness from a dad? Is it the suit with the bats? Why are the people that's killing the cats? The government put the whole country on lockdown. Woo! Evacuated nationals, the flights getting stopped now. Woo! A plane was turned back with all the people and all this baggage. Thank you, China, because of your choice, the whole world now can have it. Damn! Hell for all, why leaving no one behind? Things politics matter when the human lies on the line. Hell for all, why leaving no one behind? It's gonna help where my people's always here all the time. Give us a sign. My country, my people had the medical power to stop pandemics. We're next door neighbors, but still stop the case only at 11. It's basics. We're the first non-health organization nation to extract the coronavirus sample safely from a patient. Face it. But due to China's influence and all the hatred that's rooted, they keep on asking who's Taiwan. Therefore, we're never included. Even the Director General said we should all thank China for no days outside the country. But fucking man, they're all liars. This is not the game. We're not trying to blame. They say the numbers fake, cause the numbers getting changed. If we can trust what they say, how do we protect our lovers? We need happy organization is what we should say on the covers. Look, even if Taiwan was not in the group, we're in this war, so we're part of the troops. Never backed off when they needed our crew. This is a fact, you can pardon the truth. Taiwan did what we're supposed to do. Hurricanes to Ebola too. Nuclear meltdowns to coronavirus. Cause if we don't, then who? Health.
Alright, so this is much more aggressive. Well, what I realized from the different songs in different areas is that they have different approaches in the songs and different approaches towards the pandemic. Well, here in Taiwan, Dwagi is clearly targeting WHO, that he calls Winnie Happy Organization. And he's criticizing China, where he says, thank you, China, because of your choice, the whole world now could have it. And the storyline in his lyrics is pretty clear. The first part is the story of the pandemic in China in the voice of Dwagi, and the second part is like the non-recognition of Taiwan as a WHO country and the unfairness of this treatment. Because to remind everyone, so Taiwan is not in the WHO, did not participate in the WHO meetings because somehow there has been Chinese obstruction and WHO doesn't recognize countries that are not in the United Nations, and China happened not to be, if I'm correct. But I think this is the whole story about WHO and Taiwan.
Yeah, there's also an observer status to countries that are not officially recognized, but Taiwan lost this observer status with the election of Taiwan as a retaliation from the Chinese state.
Despite the fact that Taiwan has a very strong health system and had probably one of the most effective answer to the coronavirus in the first place. So this is an example of an open criticism. Like, this is something you're never going to listen into Chinese rap. This is direct, this is violent, and this is there is no opaque writing. It's straightforward. In Xi Jinping virus, the other song, Dwagi comes back and says something like, the Chinese are innocent, call it Xi Jinping virus. CCP caused everything, call it Xi Jinping virus. Which is, of course, hasn't pleased anyone in the mainland. And he already received a death threat for those lyrics. So it's pretty serious. There has been reactions in Hong Kong too. This is not about rap music, but it concerns music. There has been a little series that was released and had disappeared from YouTube today called HK Lanto Highland. And they had a choir singing songs about the pandemic called the District Boys School Senior Choir. And it was very funny because it was made in kind of South Park theme animation, and they sang songs about virus called Bing, one called Inflammation, another one called Shall We Cough. And they were, of course, making fun of the handling of the crisis in mainland China they were witnessing at that time. Maybe also very interesting is to look at the diasporas of Chinese people. And so I said I was in Vancouver at that time, and there in the very beginning of 2020, a team of Chinese rappers in Vancouver released a cipher that made quite some noise. And the head of his team is called Plan Z. And he's working with Johnny J, and he's getting more and more famous. And right after the release of this cipher, where he brought like some other Chinese rappers from Canada to this song, he released another song called N95. N95 is the brand of the mask, right? That we were all looking for at that time, because it was like a very efficient mask. And his approach on the pandemic through his song N95 and the lyrics is much more black and white. He is much less optimistic than his counterparts in the mainland. And that can be explained by the fact that he is witnessing what's happening at home while being in Vancouver, right? And he has a line that is pretty interesting and says, N95 made my people, makes us looking like disease. And it's very interesting because I remember at that time, like Canada has been hit very late with the virus, and especially the west coast of Canada. It came much later. Actually, there hasn't been lockdown or whatsoever. So we saw the virus like spreading fast. And wearing a mask in March, when he released his song, wearing a mask in Canada was something people would not understand. But of course, if you look at the situation in China on one eye and the situation in the place you are with the other, then you know it would be better to start wearing a mask in March. But this general idea of like defending Chinese people involved in the pandemic and that suffered abroad from being Chinese is much more important, of course, through the music that is being made by Chinese rappers abroad. They send their support to Wuhan people. They send their support to Chinese. They probably also like send medical supplies to Chinese in mainland China. But when they are going to make music, I'm thinking of Plan Z, I'm thinking of Bohan Phoenix, I'm thinking of MC Jin, all those quite famous Chinese rappers abroad. Well, they're gonna tackle the idea that Chinese are not the virus. Bohan Phoenix released a song recently called But I Still Love You, with all the proceeds going to Hate is the Virus. MC Jin with Wyclef Jean released Stop the Hatred. So this is a really different approach towards the pandemic. It's going to come much later because they're going to be impacted much later than in the mainland. And they're going to target the idea that the virus is not linked to the color of your skin. And they're also going to witness all the violence in the Western society towards Asian in general, towards Asian restaurants, towards Asian women. And they're going to talk about the virus, they're going to talk about the pandemic, but much more into this light, the light that hate is the virus and not the Chinese people.
Thank you. I will take some questions from the audience now. So Aurelia is asking, could you give us some comparative perspective with Chinese rock scene? Did Chinese rock bands, singers engage in charity rock similarly to those you've been studied? And if not, I will assume why.
Well, yes, Chinese rockers engaged in charity rock. If we take back the very first song we talked about, Let the World Be Filled with Love, we have the grandfather of Chinese rock, Cui Jian, who is
with much reluctancy.
Yeah, he doesn't seem very happy to be part of it, or maybe it's the pink jacket or the yellow jacket. But Yeah, Chinese rockers took part, I think I can say so, into charity rock before. If the question, though, is asked about the pandemic, then that is a very interesting question that I would not dare to give an answer to. Did you spot some charity rock Chinese rockers?
Not that much. Not that much. And most of the charity songs are not charity rock songs that were coming from China were from pop stars, so pop music. Even with you meant during the COVID-19 crisis. So during the COVID-19 crisis, you had a lot of charity songs, but from pop musicians, not that much rock musicians. And
yes,
I know that Ton Coup de Sion, Miserable Faith is doing a lot of charity songs, but it was more related. Oh, no, they did give money to the Red Cross or something like that during the COVID pandemics, but they didn't release songs. Now they are touring China for the benefit of a charity for the doctors. But not related to COVID-19. So you have rock bands doing charity, but not during the pandemics, I think.
There has been a lot of charity songs, and the famous songs we talked about, like Hand in Hand, Let the World Be Filled with Love, they have been renewed during the pandemic. And that's also an interesting point. They didn't write new songs, or they've also reused old and very famous songs. So with YouTubers, for instance,明天会更好, Tomorrow Will Be Better, has been re-recorded by a Taiwanese YouTuber, and quite had I think some dozens of millions of views. Let the World Be Filled with Love has been re-recorded by Guofeng, and international singers, and has also been re-recorded by 100 of pop stars gathered by iQIYI, including Wei Fan, and also Hand in Hand, very recently actually in Taiwan, which has been re-recorded by, I think it was the initiative of the Golden Melody Music Awards.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and so it's mainly, I think this thing in the pandemic has been mainly led by pop stars or pop idols. I haven't seen much rockers.
Even if the new season of乐队的夏天, the big band was released on September last year in August or something like that. So several months after the COVID-19 pandemics, the participants didn't do anything special about COVID-19. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they were dealing with their own problems and own censorship at the time. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to take another question from the audience. So Hugo says, thank you for your presentation. Has the CCP used Chinese rappers as a soft power tool for internal and international audience?
All right, this is a very interesting question because it raises some...
In general, I think, yeah.
The one important thing to look at in the song is the language people use. When most of the songs at that time leave apart maybe the chorus or a couple of lyrics will be in Chinese, and having songs written and performed in Chinese mean one thing: you're addressing yourself to a Chinese audience mainly. It's very likely that your message is not dedicated to a broad audience. And what makes me say so is that the exact contrary, the song from Douagi, of course, English is only one of the languages he speaks, and he decides to write it in English, just like the next song, Xi Jinping Virus, because he is addressing to the whole, the international community, right? That makes his message addressed in the first place, well, to Chinese authorities, but especially to the WHO authorities. So the message conveyed through the songs I studied has been mainly aimed at the mainland audience, we can say so. Just like the narration of the people's victory over the virus is on the one hand aimed at the international audience, but it's going to come later. But on the first hand, on the second hand, sorry, it is aimed at the inside of China in order to convince the people that the CCP did a good thing. It is indeed a victory. We're not talking about the number of deaths. We're not talking about the real political issues. But so they craft a tale for Chinese mainlanders to adhere to embrace this narration. Did the CCP use Chinese hip hop as a soft power tool during the pandemic? Well, I'm very tempted to say yes. And one of the songs can give us some insights on this. It is actually a song I didn't discuss today. It's a song by Xiaoli PC from CD-Rev. CD-Rev is a nationalist group based in Sichuan, in Chengdu, and like people that look at Chinese hip hop know them because they are basically conveying the words of the Chinese government and the Communist Youth League. And he released a song called 明天会的好, Tomorrow Will Be Better. And this song is also accompanied by a music video. He released this song very early. Of course, he's praising the authorities. He's stating everything will be all right. Remain quiet, follow the orders. Well, this is what you can expect from a nationalist band in China. And his music video, interestingly enough, hasn't been released by himself on Weibo. When it has been released on Weibo, it has been released by the People's Daily in the first place. And this is not a random act, right? Imagine if you're whatever rapper you want, Playboy Cardi or Drake or whatever, and actually you don't release your music video by yourself, but the New York Times release it, or any other newspaper. But it happens that People's Daily is a renowned mouthpiece of the government. So I would say that it's pretty straightforward actually to say that the government use hip-hop as a soft power tool, but somehow it benefits them to pursue the narration of the crisis, just like I said. Yeah.
Yes, and also I remember that one of CD-Rev's songs was also released by the People's Daily, which was Hong Kong Fall. So it was on the Hong Kong protest. Yeah,
which is sung in English. It's
in
very
English.
When you look at CD-Rev's songs, they can perform both in Chinese and English, and depending on which language they're going to use, they don't address the same people. Mm-hmm.
I think like there's another question also in the same line. So it's Alice. You said that the songs which endorsed a more official narrative didn't really spark backlash debate among Chinese hip-hop community in China. But what about their fan base abroad? Did it have any effect on the support for this Chinese band abroad, for example, Vava or Higher Brothers, for the bands more well-known beyond China? Well, I think it's also more related to Hong Kong because Vava and the Higher Brothers, they shared images from the People's Daily supporting the Hong Kong police. I don't know if they did the same thing during the COVID. But yeah, it had a backlash on their supporters abroad.
I haven't seen much backlash. I mean, it would need more deeply focus on the social networks. Like, so the most internationalized rappers, of course, are involved in, they have an Instagram account for most of them, that they use to convey political messages sometimes, that they used to exchange with international audience. And yeah, you're right to remember, like big acts took a stand for the police during the Hong Kong riots in 2019. But even like no longer than a couple of months ago for the Xinjiang cotton, once again that happened. They went all over Weibo to show their support to Xinjiang cotton against H&M and Nike. And they made a fuss online also about it on Instagram, etc. I haven't noticed a backlash, and I think one reason is because this is a very Chinese topic here. At that time, it is a Chinese topic. Remember in the first, remember what we were doing in January and February 2020? Virus was not on the table. So eyes were not looking at China, not so much. And one other thing that might explain this, it is that the news are so fast that things are going very, very quickly, right? The guys record a song, release it on Weibo, and that's pretty much it. And then 2 weeks later, things are gone. And the beginning of 2020 is pretty fast forward, because if you think about it, one disaster eluding another, the pandemic is gonna give place to the death, the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and then the whole Black Lives Matter movement, where here Chinese rappers are going to take a stand. And they're actually going to be heavily criticized for taking a low stand or not taking a stand, which is also a way to take a stand, not taking a stand. But so I didn't notice international audience coming to criticize what was being done in the mainland. The mood was like pretty frightening. It was moral panic, and you don't shoot on the ambulance, right? You just, it's afterwards you realize, well, this has been like crafted that way or the other way. But no, backlash is not such an important thing in that matter, I think.
Maybe I have a last question about the news. So after the COVID pandemic in China, what can you tell us about what's happening now in the hip hop scene after the end of the crisis and the reopening of live venues?
Yes. So I tried also for today to look at the dates a little bit, just to remind, because it's complicated now to think about a precise date when things reopen in China, and also because it reopened at different scales depending on where you are. So as I said, the reopening of the indoor cultural places was stated on May the 8th. But I think in Chengdu, where I'm mainly based, it wasn't before May or June that concerts started again, live venues started again. And at that time, there was, you had to show your QR code to enter closed places. So it was strictly regulated, yeah. But I think it's really after or during the summer of 2020 that things got very much smoother, actually, for the music, for the musicians, the music venues, and the music fans in China. And what is pretty complicated for us to understand, probably for those like me living in the West, it is that music has been going on in China for the past, 1 year maybe, and while concert venues are still closed here or heavily lower down, what has been what's new for rap in China? What came out of this? Well, basically a lot of things. Hip hop invaded the mediascape in China. There has been a multiplication of TV shows dedicated to rap. So I can tell you Rap Star by Mango TV. I'm going to give the English names. Rap for Youth on Bilibili. Hip Hop Bank by IT very recently, and a new TV show that should pop up very soon, I think, called Girls Like Us, Hyper New High by Tencent Music Entertainment. Well, hip hop is everywhere in China. There has been a diversification of hip hop, which is very interesting. Talking about Chinese hip hop in the first place didn't make much sense, but today it doesn't make any sense at all. It is a huge, bright landscape of talented, very talented people. But as anything that goes wider and wider, you have like the very best and the very worst. But the good thing is like much more and more innovations arrive in Chinese hip hop. The development is more and more interesting because it has more and more Chinese flavor. It's less of a copy than it used to be before. Now we have real cultural products that I deem very interesting and very rich. But on the other hand, next to the diversification and, well, unfortunately commodification that goes with any kind of pop music that goes viral, we also have a trend that is following a rising tone of nationalism in the Chinese society. On the internet, among the youth, and hip-hop is only mirroring or giving a glimpse of what it means. So we have more and more interactions of rappers with like social matters or taking a stand on political affairs. And we have also, well, they pay much more attention in the image they convey. We have much more reference to the Great China, the traditional culture, to the importance of the party sometimes even. And maybe the last example in date, and we're gonna have to talk about it because it happened 2 days ago, is the 100% song that got released. So on the 20th of June, 2021, that is a collaboration made in order to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the CCP. And the idea, so this cipher, they call it a cipher, it has been made by a Shenzhen company called Hip Hop Fusion, and it gathers 100 rappers, 100 Chinese rappers, to express well, good wishes and happy birthday to the CCP, to the 100th anniversary of the CCP. It's called 100%. This is very interesting because, as I told you, the evolution of hip hop in China has been quite controversial. It has been through different phases, and this is something. This kind of collaboration, 100%, is not. It's impossible to imagine such a collaboration for such an anniversary in not any other context than China. And it says a lot about the mixing, the strong relationship that exists today. I see it as a triangle between rap, the market, and the politics. And by politics, I, of course, understand Communist Party of China. And this is the last illustration of the development of Chinese hip hop. And this is very, I think there's a lot to be said, probably in another webinar where we could tackle this kind of collaboration.
Yeah, and just want also to share from the this one. So also in this song, telling the 5,000 years history of the Chinese state, and also the fact that Hong Kongese and Taiwanese are all descendants of the dragon, which is also a reference.
Yeah.
Folk rock.
I think we can't hear you, Nathanel. I cannot hear you anymore.
Hi. It's good.
Better. Perfect.
There was a small problem with technical problem. So yeah, you can see that this song is also referencing this kind of before this kind of
Oh yeah, so yes, I can. All right. So it seems so. It seems like Nathanel has a technical issue, and he asked me to conclude the webinar. So be it. I'm very pleased to do it too. Well, yeah, I want to thank you. So the people I don't know who followed us today, but I want to thank the audience for well, listening to my words and to asking very interesting questions. This has been a very interesting talk and an interesting webinar to prepare with Nathanel. So I want to thank him again and thank all the work from China Perspective and the CEFC. Thank you so much for having me. And you can find my article in the last China Perspective in English and in French in the best libraries. And I wish you all a pleasant afternoon or a pleasant day if you're in the West. And bye-bye.